Hey there, YouTubers. All right, so I'm gonna try to do this in about half an hour. So if you don't catch everything, you might want to go back and just review, just replay it again. So okay, um, I use an older version of Valve Hammer Editor. There are newer versions. I've tried some of the newer versions. One of them is called, what is one of them? Let me take a quick look at my folder here. One of them's called Quark. Quark. I believe it's up to 6.6. I tried it. It works really good. The way you move around the map is somewhat the movement of the keys, or the keys to move around on the map, is a little difficult because it's not the same as the original one. So that's where I had difficulty, but it has some really nice uh, applications in there, built-in functions that, like for instance, making stairs, that work really well. Okay, let me make sure. There is another one that I just found that's called Sledge, Slege. Okay, I can, and let's see. Click. Let me. Okay, I was going to show you a window of mine. But anyway, it's called Sledge, Sledge. I just came across it. I remember I had downloaded it, but hadn't hadn't used it, and so I can't really comment on how that works. Uh, so the first thing that you'll probably want to do. Oops. All right. So if you follow the links in the help file of the Valve editor program, it won't lead you back to the Valve website. All the links are broken, so that's not going to be much help. Um, if you download um, the software for the hammer, let's see, okay, and this is where I know this website is available. It's called zhlt.info, and so you can download everything, or at least there's links to where you can get the stuff here. Okay, here's Valve Hammer Editor, and then there's Quark, which is it's shortened for Quake Army Knife. Okay, and there's some other tools that you can use, but the reason I have this linked is, one, to get software, or an updated version of the software. I believe you can get it from Steam. It just it's just difficult to get around and find what you need. It took me a while to find, for instance, this web page and it's actually at Valve. It's not on Steam itself, I don't think. Yeah, it's valvesoftware.com. And so anyway, let's get back to this. The first thing, there's a few things that you have to do. Oops, let's go back here. I'm gonna go for one of the things is you need to set up the software. And I'm doing this. I'm not prepared to. I didn't prepare anything, so if I make a mistake, I make a mistake. And let's see. Hotkey reference, configuration. Okay, configuring hammer for Half-Life. Okay, let's go back to this. One of the things is you got to go in and edit the configurations. It'll have the different ones in there. Most of the time, I don't believe it'll have day of feet. You just have to type it in. So, and essentially what you have to do is make sure that you select the Half-Life folder and then the mod. Okay, in this case, here's the Half-Life. And so you got to go to your Steam folder and you just got to find the right directories and line them all up. Okay, the game directory, all you have to do is set it up to Half-Life/Valve. And you can set up a directory for where your maps are going to be saved to, and that's what this RMF directory is. Okay, the other part is your build programs. Now, I don't remember if it complains whether these are inputted or not. If we go back to this page, this is Zoner's Half-Life tools. And this is what I use. Okay. And this is the tools I use to, after you've made your map, you have to compile the map into a BSP, a file that the game can read. Okay. So there's, for really simple maps, the Valve Hammer, the Hammer map editor will work. But once you start getting more complex stuff, it can't really handle, and there's limitations to what it can do. So this person, Zoner, came up with, I guess he made his own compile software and used everything from Valve, but customized the tools. I suppose he had access to the source code, so he was able to change it, and so you can build bigger maps. Use there's errors that happen when you use different entities next to each other, or faces of the building components. And so I use this. You'll have to go through and download that, and it'll be similar. Setting up the zoners will be similar to Valve's configuration, which there's the game executable. In other words, where is Half-Life or HL.exe located? There should be one in your DoD folder, okay, or at the very least in your Half-Life folder. I'm pretty sure it's in your Half-Life folder. Is the HL, the executable for the game, okay? Because remember, data defeat, opposing forces, all those are modifications on the Half-Life engine. Okay, and then there's the CSG executable. Okay, there will be see. Oh, okay. What? Why don't I just go to here and show you what I'm talking about? Oh, there it is. All right. Sorry about that. Transition over. Okay, there we go. All right. Let me go back over this then. I didn't realize. Okay, so I was talking about configuration here. This is the one where I actually typed in data defeat. Uh, Game data files. It's looking for a file that's called dod.fgd. Um, Texture format, you're going to be limited to Half-Life essentially. Again, here's the point entity class, and these are default to make it easier. So when you click on the thing, it'll give you that class first. Game executable. This is where your hl.exe is. The mod, and it's for the DoD folder. Collect that, and so forth. And the last one is RMF. Okay. Then the build programs. Again, it's still that carries over from this game configuration. Okay, so you don't change that. The game executable, they're asking for, again, here I have it set to Steam. And again, this is a CSG. Remember, I was saying, oops. Okay. I need to open another window, I guess. Thing 3. So when I click on one of these browse buttons here, okay, when I click on one of when I click on one of these browse buttons, okay, it'll open up a window where it has HL and then 3 letters, and they all match these in here: VSP, VIS, RAD. So all you have to do is go back to have it go back to the Valve. It's in your Valve editing folder, and so you would link all those to in here. And then the last one is, where do you want the final compiled map to go to? Okay, and like I said, this is for a really simple map. So let's go. Let's see. So, okay, so these are just simple, just a general configuration of how things move, the cursors, what do they look like. You don't really need to change anything unless you can play around with that. It's not going to really hurt anything. It'll make just the visual effects different. The 3D ones, this is goes to performance of, if you don't have a very strong computer, you can change things here so that things show up, only when they're close up, whether to animate certain models, things like that. You can change the speed, how fast you can move within the program. Okay, and the last one is kind of important. I don't recall if it's blank when you I think it is blank when you first run this program. So I have it set up to HL basics.wad. In fact, if you go to your, oops, now I got to go back and see if I can. Let me. Where am I? In window. Okay. I'm in window 1. There we go. Side note. Here. Okay. There we go. Please. Let's see. It's not letting me select the window here. All right. So if we go to our gaming directory, go to Steam. Actually, you're going a different way. No, that's the easiest way. Okay, so we go to Steam apps, common, Half-Life. Okay, if you go to your DoD folder, you have all these texture files. They're called WADs, .wad. Okay, and generally basics is there. Counter-Strike WAD is there. And I'm not sure if I'm pretty sure the HL Basics is there, and so is Half-Life WAD. Okay, the Half-Life WAD is more toward the actual original game, which is more science fiction, textures and things like that. I don't recall. Let's see. Let's look at the details here. See how big they are. Okay, so the Half-Life WAD is really huge, so you do not want to include that in your in this texture file. You don't want to select it because it will slow down the program quite a bit. Okay, so I would suggest going with, like, for instance, the HL Basics, and maybe pick a map that you want to use the WAD for. Do not use the temp decal. Those are the logos that people spray on the walls. So that will be kind of useless for you. Actually, that is your own spray, your own logo that you spray on the wall. Okay, so it's only one picture. Okay, and that's what these files are. They're a conglomeration, or they're a compilation of pictures. Okay, picture files that are in one big file. Okay, that's what these are. So right now I already have some files here. I created my own DFH WAD. These are pictures that aren't, for instance, some of them are in the HL Basics, but so there are some common textures that aren't in that are common to what I use, stuff that I like to use, and isn't necessarily in every WAD file that's out there. Okay, there may be a duplication in one of the other files, but not necessarily. So lately I've been working with the DoD Tiger, so that's why you see DoD Tiger on the screen. Okay, so we got all of that. I think that was everything in the options. Textures was the last thing. Okay, so you want at least one WAD file. If you have two, that's great. Just remember that the textures won't show up unless they match your map. Okay, or let's put it this way: when you save your map, it remembers which WAD files were in that section. And let's say you changed that at a later date, and then you reload your original map, right? And you don't have those WAD files. It will still load, but the textures will just be monochrome colors and not the actual textures. Okay, so, oops, you got a big blank screen. Sorry. All right, let's go back. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new file here. Okay, this is how it looks like when you hit new. Okay, so I don't know if you can see the dark green and crosshairs here on it. The upper right is the top view, and then you have a front view and a side view, which will be kind of obvious once I start doing things here. So the first thing you want to do is have, like, for instance, ground for your map. Okay, so if we go down here to the block tool, which is this fifth one down, okay, nothing happens. Okay, but actually something did happen. It if you come down to the right hand side, it says categories. There's to world, to entity, and it says primitives. And then under categories is objects, and it says block. Okay, that is a essentially an object to build building blocks for your map. Okay, so and if you hit the down arrow, it will give you other options besides just the block. It gives you a wedge option, cylinder option, a spike option, and an arch option. Okay, so I'm going to leave it on block. Okay, and then I'm going to just draw an outline here. Okay, and if you notice, it's rectangular up here, or a large rectangle on the top view, but on the front view, it's very thin. And the side view is equally thin. Okay, now if I haven't created anything, I'm just drawing an outline of where I want my block to be. Okay, if I make it square, like so, you'll notice the side view and the front view are almost identical. Okay, now let's say I make it thinner, you'll notice that the side view is now thinner than the front view, which is what you would see from, you can tell from the top view that should be the case. Okay, so I just want it to be, it's okay for it to be thin like this, okay, because this is going to be, okay, you notice I zoomed in and out on that side view. Okay, if you use the wheel on your mouse, if you push forward on the wheel, it zooms in. If you pull back on the wheel, it zooms out. Okay. I'm pretty sure if I right click, oops, no. Oh, if you want to move side to side, I don't think there is there is no grab and pan tool in Valve. You have to use these sliders on the sides to go up and down. So, okay, so let's see. Let me double check, make sure there's, I'm seeing a lot of blanks on the screen, 832. Okay, let me double check. That was at 8:32. What time is it now? Oh, 8:48. Okay, we're good. Okay. So anyway, okay. So now I'm gonna right click within the boundaries of what I've drawn out. Okay. So when I right click, I get this pops up, create object. Okay, and you'll notice it created it in green. The program selects the color for you. You can select the color of the outline. Let's see, but okay, so we're gonna go over here to the left-hand corner where it says camera. Or camera is blinking off and on over here. Okay, but in order to actually use that window, the camera window, you should really come over here where it says camera. And you'll notice it gives you an option to use a keyboard command to change it to shift. Okay, so if I left click on the mouse, I can now move up and down. Okay, I'm left clicking the mouse and holding it. Okay, and I'm moving it forward and back. Okay, and you'll notice that there's an object there. Okay, and this object is what I've drawn. Now, if I direct you over to the right hand side, oops, see the right hand side over there that way. Okay. Um, on the far right, you'll see there's a green texture with a 1 in the middle. Well, you'll notice also if I roll the mouse wheel in and out, it will zoom in and out in this window. Okay, just like these other windows. Okay. Um, if I zoom in, you'll notice the texture matches the what I've drawn. Whatever you selected in whatever is selected here when you create your object, that is the color of the object that's going to show up. If I want to change this, I can click on the object. I can click it, but I have to click it in the other window. Like, oops. The reason I did that is because I'm still in camera mode, which is the third icon down on the left hand side. Okay, you need to, in order to select anything on the screen, you have to click the first icon, which is the arrow, the selection tool. Okay, now if I click over here, it selects it. Now you'll notice that it turns it dark in the camera view and highlights the edges in yellow. Okay, you can still do a little bit of panning in the camera view. For instance, if let's see. Okay, let's go back to camera view so I can move this. Okay, if you right click while in camera view, let's zoom out a little bit. Okay, if you right click and hold, you can move it and you move the mouse in and out, forward and back, that is, and even side to side it will work. Okay, it does different kinds of it does a horizontal move instead of a twisting motion. If I use the left button and hold, it does a twisting motion. It still does up and down kind of a little bit, but it's actually a rotational motion. Whereas if you do the right click and hold, it's more a linear motion, up and down, side to side. Okay, so the left button and hold is rotational movement, and the right button is linear movement. Okay, so so I right clicked and moved it up. Now I want to twist it or rotate it so that the back end, I can see more of the back end. So I'm going to left click and pull it toward me. So now it's rotating. Oops, but now it's too far away. So I'm going to linearly bring it down vertically by right clicking and holding, pushing forward. Okay, so now I can see more of it from there. Okay, so let's go back to the selection tool. I'm going to select, you can select it here or you can select it over here. The other way to select it is to draw a boundary around whatever you want to select. Now, it'll select everything within that boundary. So if you have more than one object, that could be problematic. Okay, but let's say I don't, obviously you don't want ground to look like this, right? So I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to come over here to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to this 3-colored cube, and it's toggle texture application. Okay, so when I click on it, it pops up a window, and it's asking me, okay, what do you want to do with how this looks like? Okay, and so I'm gonna go. Oops, you don't see the little window. Okay, let me create a scene here. Let me add it to this window. Oops, hold on. For add a window capture. Okay. No, not that. Not giving me an option here. Oh. Space properties. You cannot see the little window that I'm looking at. Let me see. What's here? Huh. I cannot on here. Let's try here. Video, media group, scene. Okay, what I'll do is I'll just show my whole window. That's fine. Okay, why don't I do that? Yes. Let's show my whole window. Display capture. Okay. All right. Transition over. Okay. So now you have, it says space properties, right? I can't make this little window bigger, but there's a browse button here down at the bottom, and you'll notice there's various textures that I have loaded. Okay, and there's a little slider on the side that you can use to scroll up and down. Okay, so they have a texture called ground right here that I'm selecting. I don't know if you noticed it turned white on the side. Okay, if I double click on it, I could the way you select it is you double click on it. That's the only way I know of. Okay, so I'm gonna double click on it, and you'll notice the little display in the middle there, or the bottom there of the small base properties window, it has changed to the ground. Okay, so now I'm going to apply it, and you notice in the camera it's red because when it's selected it turns red. The object turns red. Yeah, you could probably adjust the colors if you want. I'm not sure if that's adjustable or not. I think in the more advanced softwares you can adjust the colors to whatever color you want. Okay, and so let's go ahead, and I'm going to close this window, and you'll notice the selection goes away. And okay, so now that's ground. Okay, and one of the things you need to do to make a map, this is just starting ground level, right? So one of the things that's required in making a map is, let's go down here where it says number 4, it says entity tool on the left hand side, right? Okay, entity tool, number 4 icon, right? Now, once I click on there, if you notice, remember I clicked on block tool, and over here it said categories primitives. Okay, so now I'm going to click on the third one, which is entity tool. If we go down here to the lower right hand corner where it said categories, it used to say block, now it says entities. Okay, and that's the only thing that it lets you select under categories. Now, one of the things that's required in making a map is this info for dead defeat, is this info DOD detect entity. So let's go ahead and add that, and click right there in the middle of the map. Okay. Now you'll notice there's a green outline on the side view, and the entity is underneath this ground block. So look, you can left click and hold and drag this entity anywhere you want. So you can decide whether it's up in the air, below the ground, okay, but it needs to be inside the map somewhere. It doesn't have to be touching the ground or anything like that. Okay, so I'm going to right click on, but this is just, right now you're just selecting where you want to put it, okay? Nothing has been created yet. Similarly to the block creation tool,
you show an out, you tell it where you want it to go, but nothing has been created until you right click on the entity or the block, in this case the entity, and it says create object. So now it's going to allow me to create an object. If you notice, it's really small. So I'm going to zoom, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel in, okay? And you notice it still has this axe with a plus on there. That's because it's still on the entity tool. To select this object, you have to go up to the upper left corner and hit the select tool, which is the arrow. And now that allows you to select the entity tool, or that entity. Okay, if we want to see what this is, okay, we know it's info /DOD detect, right? But if you're making a map and you got all kinds of these entities all over the place, it's not just going to be that entity. There's going to be different kinds of entities. So if I right click on this entity while I've selected it, at the bottom of this list, there's properties. Okay, that's one way to find the properties of that object. Okay, the other way, okay, I can remember the other way to select something is to draw a boundary around it. Now I selected it. Now if I go up to the menus at the very top, there's File, Edit, Map. If I go to Map, oops, not Map, Edit. If I go to Edit, there's also a Properties selection there. And you'll notice there's also a keyboard shortcut for it too. So if you don't want to be using the mouse too much, and if you're faster with your fingers on the keyboard, you could use the keyboard shortcuts. So if I click on it, it will now show me what info DOD detect and its properties are. Unfortunately, you cannot change the size of this window. So you have to use the slider on the side. And if it runs out of space when you're reading this, well, you're out of luck. Okay, so this is the object that tells the game whether there's going to be infinite respawns or not, or do you just die once? Like in Counter-Strike, you can only spawn once. So in Counter-Strike, these are obviously, it won't say ally or axis. It only says ally and axis because it's using DOD parameters for this hammer editor tool. Okay, if I had loaded this Counter-Strike parameters into the program, that it would say probably terrorist or counter-terrorist. Okay, so that's one of the things that you can do there. The other thing is, do you want to make the teams paratroopers? Yes or no? The country for the allied team, do you want it United States or British? Okay, and then the points for wiping out the axis of the allies. That only counts for single spawn maps. Okay, and then there's target when allies are eliminated. Okay, you don't need to know about that right now. You can have a timer if you want, and how much time you want to put in. There's maps that have time, and then there's the respawn delay factor. The higher the number, the longer the delay. The shorter the number, you can put in 0.5 if you want. I think the lowest you can put is 0.3. Okay, and then there's variables for the speed of the wind and also the weather type, rain or snow, or none. Okay, and sometimes there's parameters in the flags that you can click. It's just little click boxes. Okay, so you need this in every map you make. Okay, that way it knows how to set up your map. Okay, so we've done that. The other thing is you need to be able to spawn a character, right? So
let's go over here to, again, on the left side, number 4, the entity, right? Now we're going to go over to the right side of where it says entities, and we're going to select info player access. Okay, pretty sure that's the one. I'm going to scroll real quick through this stuff so you don't really see what everything is. But yeah, that's what I want. Okay, so spawning a access player or an allies players, that's what this is. Info player allies. Okay, so if let's do the access. There's a glitch in either my setup or in Hammer Editor where you can actually see the model for the access player in this editor, but you cannot see the allies. I'll go ahead and put both and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, so we're going to go up here and click on the map. Okay, and the only thing I'm going to scroll out in the side view. I just want to make sure it's above ground. Okay, so now I'm going to right click on it, create the object. Okay, and if you notice, it's a red rectangular box on each of the maps. Okay. So I'm going to zoom in all the views. Okay. Okay. You notice it's not actually touching the ground. Well, you wanted to get it as close to the ground as possible because what's going to happen if I leave it up that high, right now it's almost as tall as the person. Okay. If I leave it that high, what's going to happen is that the person is going to spawn in midair and drop to the ground. And they're going to take damage, probably. So let's bring it down. I'm going to zoom in on this side, on the front view, and bring it down. Okay, let's go up to the camera view in the upper left corner. I'm going to zoom in. Okay, I can zoom in and out with the wheel, but I can't do any camera movements unless I click on the camera icon. Okay, now I've clicked on the camera icon. You notice in the other views, it's not highlighted in the red boxes. Okay, it's still highlighted in the camera view, sort of, but not in the top view, in the side view, and the front view. So now I've clicked on the camera view. Now I'm going to do a linear movement side to side by right-clicking and holding it. Now I'm going to zoom in, and you notice there's the axis player. And if I zoom in close enough, you'll notice he's slightly moving because he's animated. There's different animations for each model that's in, well, there's a possibility of animations for each model. Definitely there's animations for the player models. Okay, but you notice his feet are stuck in the ground, and that's because if we look at this front view, oops, I don't know if you can see the green there, it's actually below the line there. So okay, so now I need to talk about the grid here. Okay, in the far lower right hand corner, okay, at the very bottom, there's some information there. One says info player access. Obviously it's highlighted, so that's the one we've selected. It's showing the location, the at 512 minus 384. That's the location in the XY coordinate system. And then it tells you how much zoomed I'm in. And then the last thing, it says snap on grid 32. Each of these grid squares is 32 units. Okay. Okay, which is important. You're going to always be looking at that number off and on to see how much your grid lines are. Okay, now we're going to go all the way up to the upper left hand corner. Okay, up where it says File and Edit. Right below that, there are some grid lines. Okay, you can toggle the grid on and off. You can do a 3D camera toggle. Okay, which shows you an object with 3D lines on it. Usually I leave it off. And then there's smaller grid, larger grid. Okay, you'll notice that this model is below the ground, right? So we want to go to a smaller grid, but I'm going to start clicking on the smaller grid. I keep clicking, and if you notice on the lower right hand corner where it said snap on grid 32, and I'll say 16. So I'm going to keep clicking on it. Okay, now it's at 8. Now it's at 4. Okay, and now we're going to go all the way down to 2. Okay, I don't know if it's coming across very well, but so I'm going to zoom in on this front view on the lower left corner. Okay, so that you can see these grid lines really close. Okay, and now we can now bring that model above ground by clicking the selection tool, the first icon in the upper left corner. Okay, and you notice all the views, the top view, the side view, and the front view now have selection boxes around them. Okay, so now I can do something with it. Okay, one of the things that you can do, instead of, I could use the mouse by holding down the left button and then moving the mouse, right? But if you want to do something more accurately, you can set up the grid to the level that you want your accuracy to. Okay, and then you can use your arrow keys to move the model. So right now I'm going to use my up arrow key to bring the model up above ground. So I'm going to hit it once, twice, 3 times. So we know that first line above the green line is 2 units. If a person falls from 2 units, they're not going to take very much damage. We could bring it down even lower. It's sometimes you can make it match exactly the line that you want, but sometimes you can't. Okay, so that's good enough for the game. So I'm going to zoom out in this front view now. Okay, and you can notice in the camera view he is now above ground. I'm going to click on the camera right now so I can zoom around, move around, and look and see where he's at. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom out on the top view so I can see the whole map here. Okay, and I'm going to, now the grid is too dense to see things really well, so I'm going to increase the grid, go to a larger grid. So I'm coming up to the upper left corner where there's the little grid icons, and then click the right one so that the grid lines are back to 32. Okay, so it's easier to see everything. So now I'm going to put in an ally here. Okay, so I'm going to go over here to the number 4th icon down. It's at entities. Then we come over to the right side. Okay, and then we move up where it says info player allies. Okay, and then we'll put him on the opposite side of the map from the axis. So I'm going to click there. Okay, and that I'm going to zoom out on these other views. Okay, so we can see where this is. Remember, this is just it's just a idea of where it's going to be. Okay, we can actually lower him down. Okay, so it's right on the line. Okay, so I'm going to right click, create the object. And if we go over here in the camera view, okay. Oh, the other thing is when you're in camera view, you can use your WASD keys to move in and out, left or right and left. Okay, so W to zoom in, S to zoom out, D to move right, A to move left. So you can use a combination of your mouse and your WASD keys to move the camera around. Okay, so I'm going to select the ally, and of course we zoom in to the views, he's below ground. Okay, the top view you can't tell. Okay, but the front view and the side view you can tell, and even in the camera view you can tell that he's below the ground. So I am going to use my arrow key to move him up. But see, that's not enough. Okay, he needs to go a little bit higher, just like the German. So I'm going to change the grid. If I try to move him using my mouse, I have it snapped to grid. Okay, I could turn that off. I believe. Where is that? There is I think it's in the options. Let's see. You can configure. Nope. 2D views. There is a snap to grid here somewhere. Maybe not. Maybe it's not here. It's one of these. Toggle grid. Where is it? Anyway, it's somewhere in here. I don't know. I forgot where it is. Toggle auto selection. Anyway, you could turn it off so it doesn't snap to grid, but most of the time you want it to snap to the grid. But I'm going to make the grids smaller and then just use my arrow keys to get them above the ground. Okay? So, okay. Now, that's just this is just basic. You need spawns. You need a floor, a ground. Okay? You need that entity, the DoD detect, to tell it what kind of game it's going to be. What kind of DoD game is it going to be? Okay, what armies you're going to use? What are the parameters? Is it and all that? Okay, now you may want to add, for instance, like a house or something, right? At this point, but do you? The other thing is, there's one more entity that you need to add. Okay, and that's light. So we're going to go to the fourth icon again and add a light icon. So we're going to scroll through all these until we find light environment. Okay, and we can actually select anywhere on our map, put the light icon. Okay, obviously we don't want the light icon to be at the ground. We want it to be up in the air. So let's bring it up high to there. Okay. So you can see the two there's axis spawn, ally spawn, and there's the light up above. Okay. So now I'm going to create that light entity. Okay. And if I use the camera, and you could kind of see a yellow dot on here near the cross. So if I zoom in, right, you'll see it's actually a light icon in the sky. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to use the selection tool and click on that icon. And I'm going to use the properties. Okay, remember you can right click and there's the properties. And it just gives you some basic pitch. How bright do you want it? This last one, the first three are colors. What color do you want the light to be? The last one is the brightness. So for an environment, 200 is pretty bright. And then it has diffuse brightness. That I don't know. I haven't fooled around with that, but I assume it's exactly what it's. How much does the light diffuse around objects? Okay, are there any other flags? No. Okay, I'll talk about vis groups in another time. But okay, I think you can actually direct the direction of the light on with this pitch, yaw, and roll. Okay, you'll notice that there's a little message at the bottom of this window. It says pitch and roll do not work yet. So really, the only thing you can work around with is yaw. Okay, and that's one of I'm gonna go here and look at use the camera view. Okay, and that's one of the things that you can do with um, your spawns. If I right click and select properties, okay, yaw will always refer to the top view up here, the XY top view. Okay, so right now, this ally will spawn facing to the right of the screen, just as it is on this yaw little radar. If I want him to, if I want him to spawn in a different direction, you would change the little radar direction the way you want. But if I want him to spawn facing straight down the screen, I would put him straight down at 270. And of course, you can do the same thing for the axis. And it'll be more obvious when we look at the axis, okay? This is almost the top view, okay? Kind of 3/4 view. Swapping spawns after one team wins. Somebody figured out how to do that. And they did it in Bloody Hill. So what I've done is taken the elements from Bloody Hill, all the spawns, all the entities that refer to winning the game. Okay, I've taken all that, the flags and everything, and I've used them in other maps. I don't understand completely how that person actually did it, but he was able to do it using the entities, how they relate to, how they reference each other. So, would it work in DoD to have finite spawns? I have not figured out. The only finite spawn that they have is just the spawn once. Okay. There have been attempts by people to have a limited number of spawns, but I haven't seen it work yet by anybody. There's no plugin that will do that for you. It would have to be a plugin. DoD is not set up for that. It's either set up for single spawns or infinite spawns. That's it. Those are your choices. But with the AMXX plugin, people can figure out a code to code it so that it will do a finite number of spawns. So, sort of like the way the Battlefield does it. Let's see. Okay. Okay, we're looking at the German here. You notice he is facing to the right. Okay, so if I select him, he's facing to the right of the screen. Okay, and if I right click on him and click properties, okay, you'll notice on yaw, the radar is facing to the right. If I want him to face all the way the other side, I can. Okay, so I'm clicking on yaw and then dragging it in the direction I want. Okay, right now it says 179 degrees. If you'll notice, he didn't change directions yet. He'll only change directions after I close this window. So watch for that. I'm about to close this window now. He just changed directions. Okay. Okay. So, and if I want him to face a different direction, let's say I want him to face up the screen. Okay, so I put it at, you can actually type in, if I wanted to say 90 degrees, you could actually type it in. So now I close it. Now he's facing up the screen. The one thing to remember is when you're using that yaw function, try not to look at your camera view, because your camera may be turned the wrong direction, right? If you're going to use the camera view, make sure it's the same as your top view over here on the upper right hand corner, that it matches that. Okay. Okay. So now we have spawns, we have light, we have the game parameter in the middle here, right? And maybe we want to make a building, right? So we would go over here to number 5, the block tool, and let's just draw a block in the middle of the screen here. Okay, and if we look at the lower left corner, the front view, we notice that it's not touching the ground. So you can, if I put my cursor over the handle, I can bring it down to to the ground. You'll notice it's almost like I can put it anywhere. Well, the reason it looks that way is because my grid level is at 2 units. Okay, I forgot to change my grid to a larger grid level. Now it's at 32. Now if I change it, it will snap to the 32 unit grid. Okay. So generally I don't like to have like really odd numbers for buildings. One of the reasons is that these textures, if I go over here to the upper right hand corner where it says textures, okay, and I click on browse, or if you just looking at this, well, if I click on browse, okay, let's go down and look at the building textures. Okay, if I look at this building texture, oh, let me bring this up here. You can see the bottom of this window. The bottom of the window tells you the size. You could change the size of how they're viewed. I like to view them in 1:1. Okay, it'll tell you. You can also filter the texture, so you could type in like ground, right? If you're looking for a specific type, or if you think they named it ground or dirt. You know, the thing is, people name things. There's not any everybody didn't name everything the same thing. There's sometimes people call things ground, sometimes people call it dirt, some people call it something else, right? Anyway, there's the name of the texture, K ground 1. That's the one that's already selected in the upper right hand corner of the editor. Okay, and the 256 by 256, that's how many pixels it is. Okay, 256 pixels by 256 pixels. Okay, so if we're drawing a building, generally we want the textures to match, or the building to match the size of the textures. Otherwise, you're going to get some odd things going on. Okay, or the texture's not going to fit the building. So if we go over here to these buildings, for instance, let's click the first one here, the Curry test. It looks like what it says. Yes, KL_Curry test. It says 256 by 256. Well, let's go ahead and select that, okay? Or let's see. There, okay, if I look at the one below it, the funny house, it's also 256 by 256. Okay, so let's stay with the Curry test, okay? And now it's selected in the upper right-hand corner, Curry test. I haven't actually drawn or created the block yet, but now if I create the block, it will be that texture. It will be, okay, now I'm going to adjust the top view because it's kind of odd. It had some odd numbers there. Okay, so the block that I've drawn here, if we look at the lower right corner, at the very bottom here, right below the side view, remember it says no selection because I haven't selected anything. I'm about to create something. But, and there's the coordinates will change with the cursor depending on which view I'm in, okay? And the next thing is actually the size of the boundary that I've drawn. And if you notice, one of them is 256 in length, okay? And that's the Y value, okay? In the top view, top to bottom, okay? In the top view on the upper right view, from the bottom line to the top line is 256. But from left to right, it's 288. So I'm going to go ahead and create it like this. Oh, but this texture, right, remember, is meant to be seen from the side. Okay, so you actually want the height, the z-axis, to be 256, right? So let's make that last number that says 224. Let's make it 256. Okay. And we'll see what happens to the 288. Okay. So I'm going to right click. You have to have the cursor inside this boundary, this white boundary. You have to right click inside of it. It doesn't matter which view. It could be either of the three views. You can't do it in the camera. It has to be in the view. Okay, so you right click and select create object. And now our object has been painted over with that texture. And if I zoom in on the camera view, you'll notice that there's something not quite right with this block that we've drawn, right? It looks like, okay, it painted all sides the same texture. That is what will happen, okay? But the other thing is that there's this, it looks like the ground level isn't on the ground and the top is cut off. Okay, well, it doesn't always match the way things are supposed to be. I think it's because it's applying the texture according to the 0 level of the z-axis. In other words, if I look at this front view, right, you notice the light here, this light, oops. You'll notice that this light is almost near that green origins line. That is 0 on the z-axis. Okay, so I actually drew my ground below the z-axis. So it thinks, so it's going to paint the object according to that as its reference point. But that's not a big deal because obviously you want buildings at different levels and things like that, right? So if I'm going to hit my selection button, okay, icon, which is the first icon, the selection tool. Now I'm going to click in the camera view on my building. Okay. Now the way you fix this is that you can select your object, and then you come over here to number 6 icon, the three colored cube. It says toggle texture application. Okay. And now it's showing you the texture to world and then to face. Okay. Now to world is the X, Y, and Z directions, right? They're 90 degrees to each other. If you do it to face, well, that's if an object has been turned at an angle and is not 90 degrees to the world. Okay. The other option it gives you, treat as one. You could treat everything as one object, and it'll try to evenly wraps something together. That's really good when you got, for instance, a wall has been broken up into different pieces, but you still want it to be one wall, look like one wall. So that's when you would use treat as one. Okay, but what we want to do is bring the bottom of this texture, we want it to bring it down to the bottom of the block. So you can justify your texture with T for top, B for bottom, right, left, center it. Okay, so we want to bottom it. So if I click on B, it now brings all the textures down. Okay. But are they centered? Okay, that's the other question, right? Some may be centered, some may be not. Depends on where it was when we put the texture down. But if you notice here, that's too far to the one side. That's a little off. And this one's way off. This one is kind of okay. Okay, so we could hit center and see what happens. So let's go back and select the object. Go back to number 6 icon, the three colored toggle texture application. Let's click on center. Okay. Sometimes if the object is if you didn't draw the object to match the pixels on your texture, you may have something that doesn't look right when it's centered. Okay, but in this case, we made sure the height was 256, right? So, but you can click on bottom again to make sure it bottoms it out. So now, when we look at this, all the sides are centered. But okay, so let's look at this one, right? See how the edges, the windows are close to the edges here? But then we look at this one, and the windows are not close to the edges. In fact, when we look at this texture, if we look on the left side here, you can see a little bit of the window where it wraps. This texture would keep going and keep making, repeating the texture over and over. And you will see that right now when I make, you can change, once you draw your block, you can change the shape of it, right? You can make it bigger. Let's I drag it out this way. Okay, oops, I dragged it out the wrong way. Okay, that's all right. So I dragged it out to the right. Okay, and so it repeats the pattern. But now, that's the thing you got to keep in mind is the size of the texture versus. Remember, I made it 288, so that's why I have some of this texture bleeding into the side here. Of course, you can adjust if you absolutely wanted this building to be this size. Okay, I could go here and click on it, right? And then I could center it, right? And if it was bleeding in, you can actually, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's bottom it. You can actually change by hitting the shift on the X. You can actually move the texture over. You can type in a number, or you can use the up and down keys or up and down arrows to adjust that. Okay. Okay, so now we have a building. Oops. Our building is covering our DoD detect thing. Let's change the size of the building here. It's not covering the DoD detect, and it's 256. Okay, so now we got all that. Okay, lastly, your map needs a boundary. Okay, if you have something selected, there's a quick tip. You have something selected. Oh, let me go ahead and fix this. Let's center everything, bottom it out. Okay, if you have something selected, okay, I have that selected. If you hold down the Shift key and hit Q, it will unselect it. So I use that a lot. Shift Q to unselect instead of you could click out. I could click here and then click out here in the middle of nowhere. But it's easy. Sometimes there's so much on the screen to find an empty space would be difficult. So you Shift Q helps a lot. Okay, so now we need to. I'm going to zoom out in all these views here so that I can see the complete ground. Okay, so your world, your map has to be encased in a world boundary. Okay, that world boundary is a texture called sky, SKY. So we're going to go over here and browse for a texture called sky. So I could type in sky. Oops, what happened? Oh, you don't need to hit enter. Just type it in, sky. Okay, so each of my .wad files have a sky texture. Okay, so make sure you try not to do that when you're doing your map making, but it's not. I don't think it's going to really hurt anything, except that it will know which sky you're selecting, which file it's coming from. So the first one is coming from HL Basics. Second one is coming from the DFH .wad, and the last one is coming from the DoD Tiger .wad. So I'm going to use the first one, HL Basics, and on the upper right hand corner here, you'll notice it changed to a light blue color. That is the color of sky. Okay, so now I'm going to draw a boundary around this whole map. I'm going to make it. See, the grid's already on 32, right? So I'm going to draw a block that is one grid unit away, or 32 away from the edge. Okay, so I also want to do it 32, one block below the ground. Okay, and I want height wise, you don't want it. You only want it as high as you actually absolutely need it. Okay, so I want to make sure, if we're looking at this front view here on the lower left, I'm zooming in. Remember, that's my light. This is my light entity. Well, I want to make sure the light entity is inside. So we're going to raise that a little higher up to make sure, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this into a box. So your world, your map world, is going to be inside a box called sky. Okay? It doesn't have to be a perfect box. It could be a different shape as long as it is completely surrounded by sky. Okay? That is the main thing. Okay? You could have an L-shaped world. So your sky box is going to be L-shaped. Okay? So it'll be a combination of boxes, so to speak, because you got to take each section of your shape, the L shape, right, and make sure it's covered. But this is a very simple map, so we're going to create a skybox. And if we look at the camera view, it completely obscures everything. If we zoom in, what will happen is that we'll eventually be inside this blue solid. This is a solid blue skybox. We do not want a solid blue skybox. We want a true box. Okay? And that box, I want that box to be, okay, remember I have the grid at 32 units, so I want the walls of that skybox to be 32 units wide, because I kind of, you can make it thinner if you want, but generally you want it to be around 32 or 16. I usually make it 32 so it's obvious that it is a skybox. So let's go back. Let's see. Okay. Well, we've already created that. So let's go ahead and. So I'm going to select the skybox, that blue skybox. I am going to select it by. I'm going to use the front view just so that you can see that you can select it by drawing a boundary around it. But you don't even have to select the whole thing. You just need to select the corner of the object you're trying to select. Now, if I drew that yellow box all the way around everything, it would select everything. In fact, let me show you. It will select everything inside the box, and the box, the skybox itself, plus everything inside the box. Okay, but we only want the skybox because what we're going to do is we're going to make it hollow with a thickness of 32 units. So I've selected it. Now we go up here to Tools at the very top, where the menus are at the very top, okay, up here. And there's Tools, and we're going to select Make Hollow, okay? The shortcut is Control-H, okay? So I am going to click on that. And now it's asking me, how thick do I want the walls? Well, it automatically selects 32. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I selected 32. Or the shape to be 32 away from everything. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. You can make it different thicknesses. Like I said, I don't suggest you make it too thick. You can make it an odd number or a strange number, but I wouldn't do that. It's much better to see the lines within the grid. Let me take a drink. All right, so let's do it. Now, you notice in all the three views, there's these like white parallel lines. They're white parallel lines because it made a box. It's hollow inside. The view will be the same. Okay, the view will be the same if I zoom inside the box. But if you notice the outside the box, okay, let me click. You can see the edges of each face of the box. It's like a cardboard box. This is the thickness, right? So if we zoom in, okay, the view will be the same. Okay. Oh, except now you can actually see the inside of the box, because now there's a wall there. Before there was no wall, I don't think. I don't remember. So, okay, and this is your basic map. Here, you got spawn points, you got a building, you got light, you got the parameters for your game. Okay. Let me take a quick little break and I'll be right back. I was going to stop here, but I don't want to leave you hanging too much. Quick thing, and that's how you make a building also, is I'll do a quick building. Okay, we have this building here, right? Let's make it hollow. tools, carve. Oops, not carve. So that wasn't right. Okay, let's undo the. Oops, let's undo the carve. Oops. Okay, tools, make hollow. I'm not going to make it 32. Let's make it the walls 8. Okay. You notice the textures didn't change, but the object did it. Okay. So, but the only thing with this is that you'll notice the bottom, we already have a floor, but now we have an extra floor, so to speak, which isn't really a problem. But if I go inside, for instance, Shift Q, let's go inside, you'll notice there are walls, but you'll have to retexture the walls, okay, however you need to. In fact, the way you retexture something, okay, is you hit the select tool, you do not select anything, okay, then you click on your icon for texture tool, okay. Right now it's the texture was set to sky. We don't want sky, so we're going to browse around. Okay, this is still okay. So we're going to browse around for an interior color. Okay, here's an interior color. Right, got to double click on it. Okay, and you notice it's right there. Let's go inside. I'm going to zoom in. Okay, I'm going to select the wall. You'll notice when I click on it, it only selected that one wall, this one face. Okay, but we do not want it to be, it tells me what it currently is, but I don't want curry test. I want, if I click on current texture, it will show me what I last clicked on, what I previously clicked on. Remember, I had it on AAA 1, I had it on ground, I had it on sky, curry test, and then I selected the wallpaper. So now I can go back and select the wallpaper, hit apply. Notice it's a little off because of the height of the it's not at 0 level. So we could still hit B for bottom, and it'll bottom it out, and we can zoom out a little bit. And that's how you retexture like one face at a time. So the interior, you would have to retexture one at a time. So let's do it again for these two. I'm still on the inside. I'm going to click one and then hit apply. In fact, actually, you could do more than one at the same time. For instance, if I click on this one, if I hold the shift key and click, oops, not shift, if I hold the control key, I can now select these two walls and then come in, click on the wallpaper, apply both, bottom both of them out, and we now have the inside of this building textured. I forgot to bottom that one out, but that's okay. So now the interior, the roof, of course you would have to retexture. Nobody's going to see the top of the building, so you don't have to retexture that. Okay, so now I have a box, but how do people get in, right? Okay, well I'm going to go here and browse and select. Remember that AAA texture, that one AAA texture, right? I'm going to use that. The reason I use that, it's very easy to see it in the camera view, okay? So, you notice this is the XY. If you notice this green box in the camera view, that's the ally spawn. You notice the ally spawn in the top view is above the building. In other words, so the view in the camera is wrong. It should be something like this, right? Kind of like that. If you're looking at a top, well, true top view is up like this, right? But I can't go all the way up because the skybox is blocking it. Okay. One thing that we can do
if we really wanted to go straight up and see everything, right, I could select the skybox only. And in these icons along the top here, okay, there is a red one with dotted lines. And if you hover, it says hide selected objects. If I hit that icon, anything that is selected will disappear from view. Okay? So, if you notice on the right-hand side, there's a box over here that says Vis groups. In other words, visible groups. You'll notice it says one object. That's the one object is the skybox that I selected. Okay? And if you notice right next to it, I can hit a little finger. Okay? If I hit that finger, if I click right next to the one object, right, and hit apply, it turns on the finger, and hit apply, the skybox comes back. If I click the finger again, it turns off the finger, and hit apply, skybox turns off. So that's one way to make things more easily visible or invisible. Okay, so we're working on this building, right? We want to make a hole in here for a doorway. Okay, so I am going to reduce the grid to 8, let's say. Okay, I am going to draw a box. Okay, that's 4 wide. Let's make it 6 wide. Okay, so 6 times 8 is 48, right? Okay, you'll notice it is high above the ground. Well, we want this to be down by the ground, right? So I am going to drag it down. I left click and hold to drag this proposed object or proposed block. Okay, and if I zoom in, you'll notice it's right above the floor of the building. Okay, so that's because I want the doorway to not cut into the floor. So you notice I have the building selected, but I can still have that selected and still create an object at the same time. So now if I zoom in, I've created this green object here, right? And so the command to make a hole in something using an object is carve, which is under tools. You go up to tools. In fact, you can do it here. There is, if you right click over the object that you have selected, there is a carve option. In fact, there's also a hollow option. So I could have used those to hollow out that building. But here I want to carve a hole using this object, this green object that I have selected. So under tools, the very first thing is carve. So I'm going to carve it. Okay. You click on the button, nothing seems to happen, right? Well, something has happened. It's just that the object that got carved isn't selected, so you can't see that anything has happened. Okay? Because the only thing selected is the carving object. Okay? Now, oh, I forgot to make it tall enough, but that's all right. I'm not going to worry about that. I forgot to make this green object at least 60. Oh, it is 64 high. Okay, so it is tall enough. 70. I think 72 is like what's required to walk through. Anyway, so remember we have this option up here at the very top, the cube at the top with red dotted lines to hide. I want to hide this object that I created. Okay, and now we can see that a hole was carved into the building. Okay, now of course the floor needs to be retextured, but that's easily done. But now you have a hole in your building, and it is a hollow building with textured walls. Okay. Like I said, to turn everything back on. Oh, we don't actually need the this green, you notice these objects over here. We actually don't need this green object anymore. The only reason we created it was to make a hole in this building. In fact, when we click on the building, you'll notice that now it's been cut up into different sections. So every time you cut something, it will do that. It will partition things out into separate objects. But you notice that this whole wall is grouped together, but it's not grouped with the rest of the building. Okay, because that was the only thing that got carved. The rest of the building is all one unit. There is up here at the top, there's these 3 blue icons. One's carve with selected objects. Then there's group, selected objects, and ungroup. So you can also ungroup by right-clicking. There is a group and ungroup. So if you don't want these objects, oops, I don't know what I did. I think I hit delete or something. Yeah, hit delete. Anyway, if you don't want them to be a group, you can ungroup them. At this point, you could come up here and okay, the last icon on here is run map. If you click on run map, it will actually try to compile the map into a something that DoD will try to work. Unfortunately, you have nothing to block you from going off into nothingness. Generally, you want to contain the players away from the skybox, so that they can't go into the skybox, because that will cause problems. You want them, so that's why they put walls around everything, so that you don't accidentally go into the skybox. Players cannot not go into the skybox, because you go off into nothingness, or it just causes a lot of problems. And that is a basic tutorial on just to get started. There's other entities you need to make. There's, if you want flags, right? This would be just a basic deathmatch kind of map, right? You might want to put a timer on it or something, but it's essentially, one person spawns from each team, and you shoot each other and they die, and then they respawn. But there's other entities that you can make. There's where are they? There's the control points, okay, and there's score entities, and then there's the control point master. Those are the 3 things you need to make a complete capture the flag map. Okay, but you can make a map just with this. What I've shown you, you can make buildings and hedges and things like that. There's more things about illusions and things like that, but that's something that you'd have to do later on, or learn later on, or when you investigate more into the whole world thing. Okay. Let's see. Let me show you real quick. So if we go over here, there is a first map. How to create a first map. Okay, this is on valvesoftware.com. Okay, and
there's some things that just getting started, and it goes through and tells you how to set things up. Let's see. Okay. There's the navigation, how to move around, how to use the camera. There's a camera tool. There's more to the camera tool. You can actually draw lines of sight for the camera tool. Then there's basic construction of building things, right? I could have built walls individually, right? Instead of doing the hollow, right? You could just build a thin wall, build thin rectangular objects. Okay, and then they talk about okay, you can also rotate the objects. You can rotate the building, creating a room. They created the room by drawing every wall, the ceiling separately. Okay. Then they talk about the texture tools. Okay, and you can actually rotate the textures too, so they're at angles. So if your building's at an angle or something, because it's torn down or the wall's falling down, then you can rotate it so it's at an angle too. Adding point entities. Okay, there's some other entities you can add in. They're talking about Team Fortress and Half-Life 2 here. Creating brush entities. Okay, the block tool is what they call brush. When you create a block, that's what when they talk about a brush, that is what that means you're using the block tool. Now, there's different kinds of blocks. You can make them solid and have certain kind of textures and things like that. Other than that, there's it's just a little bit more. It's more advanced. Okay, so then they talk about adding light. Of course, you can change the color of the light. They talk about that in here. And the only thing I didn't talk about was adding models. I guess I can do that real quick. Okay, here they're doing all kinds of weird things. Okay, so the thing with models is they are not solid. Okay, although there is a prefab thing built into the editor. If you add a model to a true model, okay, a model file from DoD, it is insubstantial. It's just an illusion, really. So let's go over here to number 4 icon, entity tool. Okay, I am going to zoom out here. I'm going to create an entity right here, down low, not too low. Okay, create. Oops, I forgot to change. Okay. Okay, so here I created an entity. The entity it created is whatever was in what you call it. It was set to light environment. Okay. So now I'm going to right click here. But I don't want a light environment. It will be okay, it will be environment, ENV model. Okay. Oops, you can't see it, sorry. Transition. Which one was it? Oops, here we go. Okay. So, sorry. So, I created this model here, or this entity, and I've scrolled up to where it says env underscore model. Okay. Name, you can put any name you want. And then there's an angle here that you can change the angle. Moves with, that's if you wanted to reference something else. Render effects, that's important. Render mode, that's equally important. Even more equally important is the FX amount. How much do you want the model to be visible? So, but even more important is the model. Where are you going to get the model itself? Okay, and if we click on model name, right, it's blank. Well, you notice that the box here, there's a click box with 3 dots on it. Well, you click on that, it's asking you to go and find a model to put in there. So let's click on this one that says car 21. I have no clue what car 21 is, but I assume it's some kind of car. Okay, and there is a skin body. Those are, if it has different kinds of skins or body types, it will be a number. Okay, there's 0, 1, 2, 3. Depends on who made the model. It may only have one skin. It may only have one body. And the sequences, if you can turn that on if they animated that model. Some models are not animated at all. So actually, a lot of them are not animated. So they're essentially statues. So you don't see anything on the screen. There are flags. You could drop it to the floor. Let's go ahead and drop it to the floor. Okay, the vis groups, you notice it's the same groups that are over here in the corner. One is a skybox, and the other one is the object we used to carve the hole in the building. Okay, so once I exit out of this window, the object should appear on the screen. Here we go. It is a vehicle. So there we go. But and you'll notice it didn't actually drop it to the ground. It probably will once the map is run, but we can drop it to the ground if we want by just doing it ourselves. I'm using the arrow keys to drop it to the ground, and I'm in this view. You gotta have the cursor in the view. If you're gonna use the arrow keys to move an object, make sure your cursor is in that view. So this is the Y and Z. So up and down is up in the air or down to the ground. Okay. And so now it's on the ground. Okay. The easiest way to make it solid is to actually draw some kind of box around it or inside of it. Okay, make it solid. Obviously, if you wanted to actually mimic the car itself, then you would have to draw a lot of boxes to match this might match the bottom half of the car, so you would draw another box on top for the windows and the roof. So I would create an object like so. The best thing to do is to texture it a metal color. At the very beginning, I have in the HL basics, they have metal. So when it gets hit or when people walk on it, it knows that it will be metal. Got to apply it. Okay, sorry. I forgot to hit apply. Well, it's more than just that. So I have to click on it, and to make it truly metal, you have to make it into an entity. This is when a block becomes an entity. Okay, it's no longer just a block. And you can do that by right-clicking, says tie to entity. That's one way. The other way is the right-hand side. It says move selected to world or entity. So if I click on that, it brings up this entity. It is now an entity, and the current entity is a function wall. Okay, and you don't want people to see it, so make sure that the FX amount is 0. If I put a number 255 in there, they will see the words metal on the side. But if it's at 0, the other thing is to make it solid under render mode. Okay, and that should do it for adding a model and kind of, trying to make it semi-solid. We can talk about, I can do some more videos on how to do the illusions and things like that. Essentially, like I said, you don't want the players to be able to go into the skybox, so you would have to build walls around your map to prevent them to getting into the skybox. All right. That will do it for tonight. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm using is Valve's hammer editor. There is also, like I was telling Paper that, oh, you're asking Paper if he has the Valve editor. Yeah, I think that's what I have is 3.4. Let's see. I have 3.4 also. There is another one called Quark, but I think I had troubles compiling it after I made it in Quark, using the Zoner tools. We'll have to see about that. I gotta get it accredited by somebody. There is a newer one called Sledge, 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 and it almost looks like the Hammer editor. In fact, it's just an improved Hammer editor. I haven't played with it, so Sledge. Let me type it in. I can make a customized flag for Paper. The Jedi model viewer is good if you don't know what. Like I inserted this car model, right? But I didn't know what the car looked like. It could have been a damaged car. It could have been a blue car. It could have been a modern car. I didn't know. So a lot of times I will use the Jedi viewer, the Jedi model viewer, and well, it's not Jedi. It's just Jed's model viewer, and just look through that to see what kind of model it is. But it's just as easy for me to hit the browse, click and select something out of and check and see what it looks like in the Hammer editor too. The best way, one of the best things if you can get if you want to do capture the flag or something, if you want to get those entities, right, to set up the capture the flag, one of the best ways is to use a map that's already has those entities and copy them into your map. So that's what I did with Bloody Hill. Bloody Hill does the team swap. So I copied all the entities from that to use in another map. I can probably make like a basic map with those entities in there. Make it available so that you can just grab them and you can just copy. You could have two maps open at the same time and you can copy and paste one from the other. Although, if it's an object, like a building or something, and if it's a complicated object with all the weird angles and things like that, it might get messed up when it copies it into your map. The best thing to do is copy, because I've done it, sometimes it's like I'll have a model of a tank. Like I was redoing DoD Tiger, and when I tried to use the tank, the solid parts of the tank for the Tiger tanks came in were corrupted. So I had to delete those all out and then create solid parts for all the tanks again, which can get messed up, especially because the tanks are at an angle, right? So I have to twist everything, and sometimes even that will corrupt the blocks. So. I think that'll do it, unless you guys got a question. Otherwise, it's going to be, this is a long video already. Where are we at? 2 hours? I was hoping to make it a half an hour. I talk too much. All right, guys. Unless there's something else, that will be it for tonight. And like I said, we can set up another date for some more other tips, like how to do the bushes, and things like that. How to do like areas where people get hurt. In other words, prevent the other players from going into spawn. And let's see. How to do doors. There are tutorials on that website on how to do doors. So, but sometimes it's a little tricky. It seems like every time I have to relearn how to do that. All right. Good night, all. Thanks for hanging out, and be safe out there and have a lot of fun. Enjoy the weekend.